Alrighty, everybody. Let's start with our next lecture module, number 3. Financial markets and net present value is what I'm going to talk about. This links to the Burke and DiMarzo book, chapters 3 and 4, and also in Ross, Westford, Shield, Jaffe. There's a section on net present value. You could review that if you want some added help with some, more examples and discussion. So let's begin. Right, first off, let's just basically talk about financial markets. By the way, I was reviewing my lectures at YouTube. I have been trying to speak slower and getting used to the writing pad, so bear with me. But you can use the settings tool in YouTube and speed me up, and it actually goes pretty nicely. So don't get overwhelmed by 50 minutes or 60 minutes of discussion. It can be really squeezed down to maybe 30 minutes if you're setting the speed right. So financial markets and net present value, we got to set up everything with an intro. So financial markets, right, link individuals and firms, borrowers, lenders across time. What's going on is we're getting an improvement in intertemporal investment and consumption patterns. Let's think about it, right? Why do individuals invest? Why invest? In economics, we call it, why save? Well, they invest because they're willing to forego present consumption for the future, and hopefully, larger consumption, right? So less consumption in time period 0, and in time period 1, more consumption, and maybe even more than what was given up initially. So you want to spend money now if you're a borrower. So why borrow? Why do people sell assets? Why sell common stock? So a firm is in need of some money, right? So what's going on now is we want to spend money now. So, right, we need the dollars now. And then somebody will be repaid, say. We'll repay the debt with interest, or we will receive, if I'm a common shareholder, perhaps dividends in the future. In the context here of the financial markets, consumption includes purchasing a car, a home, investing in a person's context, such as their children's education or retirement, right? Making charitable contributions, creating an inheritance. See, the financial markets allow individuals to choose their consumption and investment patterns in a way that's a limit to their overall wealth constraint throughout their lifespan. This allows them to maximize the utility of consumption over time, right? So it's like economics and time kind of married together. That is the basis of the financial markets. Now, next thing of note is, what do we mean by the term market clearing? So, financial intermediaries like banks and other institutions, they perform a crucial function, right? They match up borrowers and lenders. This market is said to clear when the quantity of money demanded by the borrowers equals the amount of money supplied by the investors, right? So there's a quantity of money demanded, call it QMD. That equals to the quantity of money that is supplied. So demanded money is the borrowers. And they're interacting with lenders who are supplying this money. We'll call them investors from the point of view of finance. If there's a surplus of borrowers, interest rates are going to rise. And that'll discourage some borrowers because money's becoming too expensive. It begins to encourage new lenders because they're getting a real high lending rate. The other way of thinking of it would be if a surplus of lenders exists, right? Interest rates are going to fall. That discourages lenders but encourages borrowers. So the interest rate that causes market to clear is the equilibrium interest rate And we think of that as, say, a supply and demand. So here's a quantity of money on the x-axis. Interest rate. There's a supply of money, demand for money. Call I star an equilibrium interest rate. This is the interest rate that allows the market to clear. Now we know interest rates are actually quite dynamic because the supply and the demand for funds will vary over time. And so very basic economic modeling going on here. See some preliminary assumptions that we'll put in place. Preliminary assumptions just allow us to start off. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume 4 issues here. First off, we're going to assume for now perfect certainty. Perfect certainty. Here we speak of outcomes that are known with 100% probability. So what does this look like in, say, a probability diagram? The idea would be, say, without risk, only one interest rate will exist in the market for each particular maturity. Differential interest rates will result from investments with different amounts of risk. So what we're going to do is just assume temporarily that risk isn't a factor. So, right, with certainty, right, it's another way of saying that there's no risk. That's a starting point. The second thing we're going to assume is what we'll call perfect capital markets. Perfect capital markets, let's abbreviate that as PCM. And what it means here is, okay, so we have free information available. Info is spread throughout the marketplace, and it's free to access. It's available to all. And right, all the participants have equal access to the financial markets. Right, the issue of access sets up the condition that the rate of borrowing, the borrowing rate of interest, is going to equal the lending rate of interest, let's call it R sub L, which equals the market rate of interest. Now all participants are going to be price takers, right? Price takers. So no particular agent in the market is large enough to impact the supply or demand for funds. Also, we'll say there are no transaction costs, no contracting or transaction costs. People can act pretty easily under such a situation, right? There's no huge barriers to engaging in the transactions. You buy and sell, and it's very simple, very costless. And we'll say there's at this juncture, we'll also say there's no distorting taxes interfering in the marketplace. Thirdly, let's see. So thirdly, we're going to assume the investors, that investors, let's say investors are rational, right? So they prefer more wealth, right? Right. More wealth is preferred to less wealth. We'll also say that investors, they want to have cash, right, sooner, right, rather than later. And furthermore, we'll say that the investors prefer, right, less risk. Less risk to greater risk. And what we'll do next then to really start us going is we'll have a one-period world. Very simple model is allowed to be built now. And what we mean then is, right, t time period 0 equals today, right? That's today. And t will become the value 1 after, right, after one time period. Right, so very simple theoretical model, obviously. So let's see, why would there only be one interest rate per maturity existing in the market if we take away uncertainty? See, in a one-period world, there's only one interest rate because now there's only one maturity. If there was more than one rate of interest, you could create a money machine. You would be able to borrow low and lend high at the same risk. Now, buying low and selling high at the same risk is called arbitrage. The arbitrage refers to the case where some item sells at two different prices, and the acting agent who buys low and sells high is said to be an arbitrageur, and they earn riskless profits when they do this. Well, interest rates represent the price of moving money across time. It's basically definition. Well, it's a price, right, for moving money across time. If money sells at more than one price, that is, more than one interest rate, you would borrow low at the low price and lend high at the high price. So what will happen in a well-functioning economy, the arbitrage opportunities would not persist very long. Traders would exploit the price differences, and their arbitraging behavior would drive the prices of these equally valuable, riskless assets. It would drive their price to one price. Now, I know these are unrealistic assumptions. Remember, these are assumptions. They're unrealistic. So we'll relax those assumptions as we go. But they provide for us a few insights without complicating elements in the mix. This is a very common technique in economics, for instance, to start with a very simple world and then add in the complications one by one. And this procedure allows us to identify how those complications come into the picture, how they, what kind of role they play, and how important they are, precisely what it is that each complication actually does. All right. So what we need to do next is identify the concept of present value. We said earlier, right, that for instance, that people prefer to have money sooner rather than later. They want consumption now rather than in the future. Now, every investor has a utility function defined with respect to consumption. And the investor's objective is that they want to maximize their utility of consumption over the two time periods. Time period 0, representing today, and time period 1, representing one period into the future. Now, some of us prefer to consume more now, and others actually would wind up preferring to consume more in period 1. See, it's perfectly rational, perfectly realistic to say there are different tastes and preferences for consumption for different individuals at different points in time in their lives, especially. So, see, tastes and preferences are a personal attribute, an individualistic element. You could reflect on your own consumption preferences, how they might change over your own life cycle. So this is perfectly acceptable in the market to see. We want a way to relate the cash flows, though, that occur at different points in time. See, we want to relate cash flows in different time periods so that we can construct this utility function accurately. Cash flows in different time periods allow consumption to take place. But remember, there's these preferences about when consumption would happen in a more ideal situation. Like, look, what would you prefer, right? What would you prefer among, let's say, these two cases. Let's call it case 1 and case 2. So let's see. Let's say you would say, oh, suppose you could get $1. $1. Shrink you guys. A little big. So $1 at time period 0. So right now, or would you like, would you like it to be that you get $0 then afterwards at time period 1? Case 2 would be maybe $0 time period 0, and then $1 time period set at 1. Now, in this scenario, you can't really directly compare the cash values because they arrive at different times. Why would you, for instance, prefer case number 1? So let's see, let R be the interest rate on T-bills. Treasury securities. R is the per period market interest rate. Let's say R, just for our purposes, is set at 10%. What a wonderful world this would be. So we might say, well, how much is case number 1 worth? You have $1. How much is $1 worth at the end of time period T1? So that's our question. And we might then, ask the same question, well, what's the cash flow worth, say, in the second case, right? And, of course, remember, we're rational, and we prefer more to less. And we're trying to set this up so that we can compare the dollar values that we're getting at different points in time, right? See, so the way that you figure out, let's say case number 1, is to take your dollar, and in the calculation, we've got to grow it by that rate of interest. Right, now that's actually greater than, let's think, right, comparing this to case number 2. This is actually greater than $1 really for all cases of R greater than 0%. So in terms of a 10% interest rate, right, we're going to take $1 times 1 plus 0.10. So 110, right? Well, that's greater than $1 at time period T1. Right, because what $1 times 1.10 is equivalently $1.10, and we know that's greater than $1 time period T1. Since you're rational, you prefer more to less. So here we compare the dollar values. In case number 1 is a better deal than case number 2. So this implies that money has time value. Right, so if the interest rate R is greater than 0%, $1 received sooner is more valuable than $1 received later. $1 sooner, right? It's worth more than $1 later. And that's because the effect upon the value of the dollar with R being greater than 0. The later monies, right, is said to be, this later amount right here is said to be discounted. It's discounted. It's not regarded as valuable, or think of it as it's valuable, but not as valuable as when I got it sooner. I would rather have it sooner, right? So which case do you prefer now? Let's go case 3. Let's see, following cases here. $1 at time period T0. Okay, so we'll go, let's see, cash in time period 0, $1. Compare that to $0 at time period 1. So let's say here's time period 1, so cash in time period 1, 0. And of course, let's look at case number 4. Suppose you got $0 in time period 0. Let's compare that to, let's say, $1.15 cash in time period 1. So $1.15. Now, the t=1 scenario in case 4 is a payoff of more than $1, right? Number 4 showed us C1 of $1.15. So this example is not really that straightforward now compared to the first 2 cases. See, we can't answer this question. We have to know the market interest rate now. All right, we must know R to answer which of these we prefer now. So for instance, if R is 10%, case 3 is $1, so it has $1, and it grows by 10%, right? It grows to $1.10 by time period, right? By time period 1. So it looks like you'd rather have case number 4, because case number 4 is paying you $1.15 at time period T1. Prefer case. $1.15. That's a better deal than case number 3. Well, what if the rate of return were 20%? If R were 20%, look at C. Case 3 has $1 to start off with, and it grows, right? It grows by 20% to be worth $1.20 by time period, by time 1, right? So now you prefer number 3. Case 3, paying you $1.20. So you need to know R, the market rate of interest, to make the decision. That's the real key here. That's a benchmark in a way. It's a very important input to the decision making that financial markets are going to provide for us. In our one-period world, right, we can always compare values of the different investments at time period equal to 1. Basically, take the highest value in that time period. Now, what's going to come clear later is that basically in finance, you're going to prefer to compare the alternatives at time 0 versus what would come about in later time periods. So to make the comparisons of the future cash all be relevant in time period 0, so we can do comparisons at time period 0, we move beyond a one-period world. So let's say that we want to say this now. Let's say C0 is cash at time period 0. And C1, right, of course, is cash at time period 1. So what level of CO and C1 would make us indifferent? Indifference meaning the same dollar amount arises in these time periods. Okay. So we saw that C0, right? We saw that C0 times 1 plus R, right, is the result of investing, right? That's us invest C0 at our interest, right? So C1 is equal to, right, C0 times 1 plus R, if we were thinking about the cash that we could have from our investment. Right? So, yeah, what this means is that we've compounded forward an equivalency, right? So this element right here is forward compounding. So with a little nifty algebra, right, we could take, look at this, all we're going to do, we're going to take this multiple right here, 1 plus R, and we'll divide both sides of our equation. Right, so an intermediate step would be to go, okay, C1 divided by 1 plus R becomes C0, right, times 1 plus R over 1 plus R. And, right, we know from basic algebra that, right, this is really a common factor. So we can cancel that, and that leaves us with, right, C, we say, right, C1 divided by 1 plus R is equal to C0. Usually written then, C0, just reverse their positions, is equal to cash found in the future divided by 1 plus R, the interest rate. So this is referring to us discounting backward for equivalency. Discounting backward. So compounding means we're taking present amounts, pushing them forward in time. Discounting means taking the future accounts and bringing those values back into present value terms. So indifference would be when C0, the cash amount in time period 0, is the equivalent of getting C1 at time period T1 given the interest rate, right? Indifference means that C0 is equal to the present value of C1. So indifference is a condition where I don't care, between getting cash now or later. So the indifference condition is to compare the cash in present value terms, right? So we write this as the cash in time period C0 equal to the present value of the cash in time period C1. So that's for present value or value today of the future cash flow. The future cash flow is C1. Now, as an example, right, if C1 is equal to $1.15, so that's that future cash, right? If also R is equal to 10%, we could take the present value of C1, so present value of C1, that's equal to the $1.15 I get in time period time period 1, right? Cash in that time period divided by 1 plus R. 1 plus R as well, that's 0.1.10, right? Now, pulling out the old calculator, the trusty calculator shows me that that's $1. It's $1 and a little over 4.5 cents. Now, so you wouldn't care if you had $1 and 4.5 cents now, or $1.15 in one period. I mean, why don't you care? It's not apathy, right? It's indifference. Here's why. Right? Why? Why don't I care now? Right? See that $1 and 4.5 cents times 1 plus the interest rate. That's equal to $1.15. Right? If you had $1 and 4.5 cents now at time period 0, you could invest it at a 10% interest rate, and it would become $1.15 at time period T1. Likewise, if you were getting $1.15 in time period T1, and if the interest rate was 10%, a bank would actually be able to loan you 1.045 in time period 0 if you promised to pay 1.15 in time period 1. Another example, let's say that now we set the interest rate. Let's make it 15% interest. R is 15% interest. Let's go case 5. So this is $1.10 today. And 0 at time period T1, T equals 1. Let's see, what do we prefer? So case 6 would be $1.25 today. And wait. I'm sorry. Ooh, my bad. Just imagine having $1.25 in time period T1 and 0. No money at time period T0. Which of these do I want? And so we're going to look at the present value of case 5. So the present value of case 5, it's very straightforward, right? It's the present value of cash 0. Cash in time period 0 is $1.10. I don't discount it, right? The present value of $1 received today is actually $1. So just like $1.10 is $1.10. What's the present value of case 6? So this is, let's see, it's $1.25 received in time period 1, discounted by the interest rate, which is 15%. Gotta pause. Okay, back. Had to deal with still have to deal with this situation. Gadzooks, hold on. Okay, resuming. So $1.25 in time period 1, discounted, gives me, let's see, my calculator work, finds about 1.087. That's thus the present value of cash received in time period 1. So you would prefer case 5. For case 5, you're getting more money. It's very simply, the higher is more preferable, right, for the rational investor. Like, what's the most you would pay for case 6? That is, you're getting $1.15 in that period, right? The most you would pay is $0.87, right? If you paid 1.087 at that amount in time period T0, and it was earning 15% in interest, well, that would turn into, right, $1.25. Right, so what, interest rate R would make you indifferent between cases 5 and 6? Another way of putting it there is, what's the value of R that would make cases 5 and 6 equal? Right, so case 5 was $1.10 today. All right, and case 6 is $1.25, but that's in a time period in the future. So I have to discount gotta pause again. Got an emergency. Okay, once again live. All right, so here we were just checking to see what interest rate R would make the future cash at $1.25 equal to current money of $1.10. So I'd be saying, well, that'd be like having $1.10 growing into $1.25. So let's just have a little bit of cross multiplying to do here. And so to solve for R, right, it's like saying, well, we got what? 1 plus R equal to, right, $1.25 over $1.10. And that's equal to 1.1364. So R here is equal to 0.13, let's call it 0, right? 0.1364. Or you could say, well, that's 13.64%. See, so now you know, well, you could say general rule would be if, let's say R is less than 13.64%. If you got this low interest rate of 13.64%, something below that, like a 10 or 4%, something like 8.1%, whatever, you would prefer case number 6, right? Case 6 is better because you get more money out of that deal. And if R is greater than 13.6, R greater than 13.6, or maybe you got 16% interest or 36% interest, whatever, well, then you would prefer, right, case number 5. You would prefer case 5. Case 5 is better. If the future value and the present value are equal, you would be indifferent, right? So next issue to deal with is the concept of net present value. NPV, right, defined as net present value. Key idea in financial management. Suppose you have an investment and it costs $100 a time period 0. So you have this investment, some project you put in place. It costs you $100 in time period 0. Let's say it pays off with certainty, right? It pays off with certainty. So it's a riskless, right, project. Let's say it pays with certainty in time period T1 the amount of $125. You can illustrate this with the cash flow diagram. Right? Cash flow diagram, time period T equals 0. You spend 100. Time period T equals 1. That's the whole world passing into that new time. And you get a payoff of 125. So the issue is, well, do you like this? Is this a good deal? You can't tell yet, right? Knowing whether it's a good deal or not depends on R. We're unsure, right? We need to know the value of R, the interest rate. Now, where do we get our interest rate? Here's how. We observe the market, right? It gives us a kind of a signal of what we could get in the real world. We take our $100, invest it in the market. A market rate of interest. It gives us a nice benchmark rate so we can judge whether an investment is a good one or a bad one. So we got a general rule. Remember, our general rule is we want to accept investments when they're worth more than they cost, right? And then we reject them if they're worth less than they cost. So looking at this investment that we've described, we say, well, what's the present value of the cost of generating the future payout? The present value of $125 received in time period 1, present value. Remember, we're going to try to take the $125, and we've got to adjust it back into the present value. So you're going to spend $100 right now, which is worth a loss of $100, investment $100, and it's going to produce a gain. Well, what is the $125 worth in present value terms, right? That's the general idea. So the net present value has a basic formula. It's equal to the present value of the inflows. Okay, say we're going to get 125 inflows. This is this plus. And we had a outflow, right? So we got to subtract the present value of the outflow of our $100. And right, the general rule of thumb is, right, if the net present value is greater than 0, accept that project. Our wealth is going to go up if we accept that project. And if, right, the net present value is less than 0, we're going to reject such a project because it would cause our wealth to decrease. If the net present value is equal to 0, we would be indifferent. Our wealth is unchanged in such a situation. So in our example, we're just writing, okay, so the present value, what's the present value of the cash flow received in time period 1 minus the present value of the cash flow that goes out in time period 0. That's the present value of inflows, present value of outflows. Just compare the two. So we're taking the net present value of $125. It's discounted by 1 plus R minus 100. Right? Remember, the $100 in time period 0 has a present value of $100. So let's say that R is equal to 12%. So the net present value in such a situation would be 125 divided by 1.25, right, minus 100. That's 111.61 minus 100. Right, so this net present value is winding up being $11.61. So we have a positive NPV, so we should accept. Right, the NPV is greater than 0. Yay, we're going to add to wealth as a result of this. That's good news. This is something important. Now, the alternative way to think about that is I could take the $125. I could have said, well, imagine having $100 at 12% interest, right? $100 at 12% interest generates, in time period 2, right? It generates $1.12. So I know an alternative investment in the market at the interest rate of 12% is worth in time period T1 in the market, remember, $112. But here I have this project that's saying, well, I'm going to be able to get you $125 instead of $112. So what's going on is that I'm better off. See, if you had invested in the project and not in the market, or, that gets you $125, and now we're saying, well, that should be compared to me not investing in the project but investing in the market. I'd be out $100 by investing in the market, but it only generates for me $112. The difference is $13. So we have this example of, say, being $13 better off at time period 1 with the project rather than without the project. See, what is the present value of the $13 difference at time period T1? Well, it turns out that it's 11.61. That's 13, the present value of the difference, right? The present value of $13 in time period T1, right? This is the difference between 125 and 112, right? So that was a difference that mattered in time period 1, up here, time period 1. So I've got to divide by 1 plus the discount rate, which was the market rate of interest of 12%. And that's 1161, which is what we found here. All right, so you can find the present value of the difference. And you see that the formula, either way I do this, creates the same answer. And of course, in both cases, because it's a positive net present value, I like this investment. So what the NPV does, right, what's crucial about NPV is let's say I'm going to write this in red because this is very important. I'll put it kind of a summary at the top of the notepad, that it considers the opportunity cost, the sacrifice of your investment. You're passing up alternatives at the market rate of investment. So it's got some wisdom. Call it opportunities or sacrifices. And that's very crucial. You can always choose to invest at the market rate. I mean, right, go out and buy U.S. government security. And this is especially crucial if you're looking for a meaningful comparison. That is, the meaningful comparison is a U.S. security here because you have a riskless investment project. So you say, well, I could invest in a riskless U.S. government security, and earn $12 on my investment. Oh, here's a project that is without risk, and I can get 125. So the firm contemplates the investment and says, that's a good idea. So if we accepted that investment as a firm, what would happen to the common stock value of the firm accepting such a project? I mean, let's say the firm has 1 share of common stock outstanding, and its only asset is a $100 bill. So the firm's worth $100. It then puts that investment into place, and after the investment, it's going to be worth $111.61 in present value terms, right? So the stock price is going to increase by $11.61. If 10 shares were outstanding, each share would go up by the net present value divided by the number of shares. The share value would be like $10 in the first part of the deal. Then they take on this project, and now the shares are going to rise by 1.6, blah, blah, blah. So see, it's 111.61. Oh, by 1161 divided by 10, right? So now each share is worth $11 and a little over 16 pennies, right? 11.161. And what we'll do, I'm going to pause and we'll review the basic equations and continue doing examples, but I think it's a good idea to halt for now. We're about halfway through what I think I want to work on. So I'm going to pause. You can pause too and come back to this.